Hello, Trail Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. Today we have my hero, Dr. Joel Wallach. He's a naturopathic physician with so much experience. He's in his 80s, and he's the reason why I no longer suffer from all the illnesses that I had. I've been mentored by him for the last 10 years, and it's such an honor to have him back on the show. Go listen to episode 435 to hear my first interview with him. In this episode, we continue our discussion, and then at the end, he answers some questions from the listeners that posted questions in the Facebook group for him. We didn't get to all the questions, so he's agreed to come back on the show, and he will continue to answer questions for us. So as you're listening to this episode, if you have questions for Dr. Wallach, come join the Learn True Health Facebook group, and when I announce I'm going to have him on the show again, please post your questions in that thread, and I will get them answered for you. Now, as you're listening to Dr. Wallach, if you'd like to get on his protocol, he designed a supplement company about 25 years ago. My family and I have actually been taking his supplements for the last 10 years, and I've been using them with my clients for the last 10 years, having fantastic success. In this interview, I say 9 years, and then I realized, oh yeah, September was the was the 10th anniversary of me on his supplements and following his protocol and reversing the illnesses and diseases I had using his information. As you're listening, if you want to get on his protocol, go to takeyoursupplements.com, and one of our experienced health coaches that is trained in all of Dr. Wallach's protocols will help you. There's also a health coach training program that completely trains you in all of Dr. Wallach's protocols, and we can hook you up, and it's very affordable, and it teaches you exactly how to help people, yourself, your friends, your family. It's a great adjunct to those who are already in the health field, but also it's great for people who just want to learn for themselves. So I talk about IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is a year-long health coach training program, and that's a major program to start a career as a health coach, or if you are in the health field in some way, to really add tools to your tool belt. If you go to takeyoursupplements.com and talk to them about learning specifically Dr. Wallach's protocols, that training is much shorter, and it's specifically designed to teach you everything about Dr. Wallach's protocols. And so it's a fantastic adjunct to IIN or to anyone who wants to learn more about holistic health and healing. I have been working with the health coaches at takeyoursupplements.com for years, and we've all been trained by Dr. Wallach and all of his information. What I love about his supplements, and the reason why he created his supplements, is after all the research he did in discovering the root cause of 900 diseases that cross species lines, and he's published his work. For the last 35 years, he discovered the root cause of major illnesses, major diseases, such as cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, even Down syndrome. He discovered there were all different mineral deficiencies and element deficiencies in utero. And he's published these findings. What he found was, as he worked as a naturopath with his clientele, that they would get inconsistent results from different supplement companies because of the quality control or lack thereof. And so he was finally driven to produce his own, which have consistently very high quality and are third-party lab tested. And you can even we can help you contact the company and get all the labs. They publish them. They're very open about showing that Dr. Wallach supplements are very high quality, bioavailable, easily absorbed by the body, and consistently get results, which is very exciting. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, which I think is really important, because I spent thousands of dollars on supplements before I ever met Dr. Wallach and felt like it was just a waste, until I met him and got on his, and overnight I started to notice fantastic changes. So if you're kind of weary about buying another supplement, know that when you go to takeyoursupplements.com and work with them, that his have a money-back guarantee. And that is to show you that you can trust them. And if you don't like it for whatever reason, we want you to be satisfied. And we want to show you that you can feel comfortable and safe trying them and knowing that the company is all about helping you get your health back which is why I'm so happy to be part of all of this. Awesome. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing the show with those you love. Strap yourselves in. This is going to be a great one. Enjoy today's interview. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 447. I am so excited for today's guest. We have my hero, Dr. Joel Wallach. Dr. Wallach, because of you, I no longer suffer from type 2 diabetes, from chronic adrenal fatigue, which had me bedridden most days. I no longer suffer from polycystic ovarian syndrome. I actually just got my blood work done with my naturopath to confirm that I am the healthiest I've ever been. But the last 9 years I've been on your protocol, I've been able to reverse all these issues. I was told that by an endocrinologist I would never, ever conceive, that I was completely infertile. And because of your protocol and your guidance and your advice, we conceived our child naturally. He is a healthy, almost 5.5-year-old boy. And you have helped many of my family members, many of my friends, and my clients through your supplements and through your nutritional information. It's such a pleasure to have you here. The difference you've made in millions of lives is so important. Your research has changed the world, but it needs to get mainstream. We got to get your information out there. And that's why I'm having you back here today, so you can continue to share this information. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, you're very, very kind, Ashley, and thank you so much for the testimony and so forth. I get more women pregnant every year than any other man in history. Because I know the process, and the human body has a phenomenal ability to heal itself, but it does need raw materials. And so you have to absorb, and then you have to have the raw materials. You cannot get everything you need from your food. It's like saying, don't waste your money on oil. Just put dirt from Texas in your car. There's bound to be some oil in it. That would be very, very stupid. Well, it's very, very stupid to just say, well, I'm going to eat well, and I'll get everything I need. Nutritional minerals occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate ice cream, and veins like gold and silver and coal. And that's why some places on Earth, people live long, healthful lives. They say, well, boy, they don't even have doctors. They live to be 160, 200. What's going on? Well, that's because they live in a place that has the nutrients there, because of the glaciers and grinding up rocks and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you see cultures, they're famous and legendary for long lives. And James Hilton wrote the book, of course, and the movie came out of it, Lost Horizon. And he was a New York Times reporter. And he was told to go to Hunza, where people were claiming to be over 200 years of age and so forth. And he went there and he spent a year, and he said, hey, this is real. And he wrote an article for the New York Times, and he made a book out of it, Lost Horizon, became a movie, Lost Horizon, and Shangri-La, where people live forever and all that kind of stuff. And so, and I think the advantage I have, Ashley, is I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician. And we don't have health insurance for animals. We do have life insurance for expensive racehorses. But when it comes to health insurance, the health insurance is the vitamins and minerals we add to their food. And we've eliminated every disease that still plagues humans. And I'm proud of this, that I was able to, through lawsuits in federal courts, force the baby formulas to put nutrients in there that doctors said were poisonous to babies. And so the baby formula manufacturers like Infamil, Similac were afraid to put it in there. Well, in federal courts, I won. And they did 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10, published in 3 languages. And we got rid of cystic fibrosis, muscular dystrophy, and crib death. I'm the guy that eliminated those 3 baby diseases. You don't hear about them anymore because I've eliminated them by putting all these nutrients into the baby formulas and eliminated them, because none of them were genetic. And certainly the mother never laid on the babies to kill them.
And even more so, prenatal nutrition, and even before we get pregnant, helping the mother become fully nutrified is incredibly important. Now, we talked about your experiences with curing Caisson disease. We didn't get into talking about your work with the Amish, though. Can you tell us the story about how you were invited, I believe it was at Pennsylvania, to go and help the Amish figure out what was going on with the the infertility and the diseases that were plaguing them?
Yeah, they had a lot of birth defects. Amish all over the country were plagued with the birth defects, and I had been working with the Amish started out in Kansas City, Missouri, who were the parents of an Amish kid who became a Navy SEAL, decorated Navy SEAL of all things. And when he came back, he said, "Look, we gotta really spend some time with these Amish communities. They have so many birth defects, and the doctors just tell them it's genetic and there's nothing to do about it." Well, it turns out that all these birth defects, and I'll tell you a couple of specific stories, but all birth defects, with the exception of getting the measles early in pregnancy and you damage the embryo that way, or maybe they'll get, you're too young probably, Ashley, to remember thalidomide, which was a pharmaceutical made to deal with morning sickness. It was made in Australia, and it was shipped over here, and OBGYNs actually gave it to mothers early in pregnancy when they were having morning sickness. We had 10,000 babies born in America with no arms and legs because the thalidomide interrupted that part of the embryonic development. With the exception of those kinds of things, 99% of all birth defects are caused by nutritional deficiency during the developmental stages of the embryo. There is no genetic diseases transmitted as birth defects. I'll repeat that. There are no genetic diseases transmitted as birth defects. There's no genetic diseases transmitted like diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and that kind of stuff. And as a result, my thesis, which is from my 10-year study, 20,000 autopsies, it's kind of like a PhD degree. It's for a postdoctoral fellowship, like a PhD degree at Washington University in St. Louis. My thesis is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. We got a $25 million grant, did the 20,000 autopsies, did all the work, tracked everything down, showed that how all the birth defects could be prevented with prenatal nutrition, and how all these diseases that are said to be genetic in families were not genetic. And the example I used was sickle cell anemia, because every species of animals can have sickle cell anemia. Both white guys and black guys get sickle cell anemia. And it's all caused by the same nutritional deficiency in the early stages of embryonic development when the bone marrow is being developed. And so this nutrient is missing in Central Africa. So that's why so many people in Central Africa, like the Congo and places like that, they have sickle cell anemia. And of course, the medical doctors say, it's due to a genetic thing in these people in the Congo. No, they're just missing that nutrient.
The nutrient is missing from the soil, so they're not getting it when they eat their food?
That's correct, because plants cannot make this nutrient. I'll give you a hint. It's a mineral, okay? The plants cannot make it, okay? So here's the beautiful part of it. So I'm seeing all these white kids with sickle cell anemia. I'm tracking their families. They don't have any interactions with black families, and there's no intermarriages or anything like that. So it turns out it's the exact same deficiency in white guys as black guys. And so in white guys, they gave it a different name. In white guys, they call it thalassemia. And in black guys, they call it sickle cell anemia. It's the same exact birth defect, okay? And I can take, and I've done this, I actually, in my presentation, I show people who both the mother and father have either thalassemia or sickle cell anemia, and they'll have 10 normal kids as long as they're getting all 90 essential nutrients for at least 3 months before they get pregnant.
Because it's a something that happened.
Nutritional deficiency.
Because it happened in utero, though, can you reverse sickle cell anemia, or is it baked into the cake?
It's baked into the cake. However, I can take somebody who has maybe 25 to 30% of their cells will be sickle cell anemia or thalassemia. I can give them a program, and I might drop it down to 12, 15%, okay? Because I'm really feeding the healthy cells in the bone marrow, and they just make more healthy hemoglobin, okay? But it is baked into the cake, all right? And so, but I can improve them, but you can't cure them. But I can take a mother and a father, both of whom have sickle cell anemia or both of whom have thalassemia, give them all 90 essential nutrients for 3 to 6 months prior to pregnancy, and guess what? They can have 25 normal babies. It was genetic, and this is why my thesis is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. One of the things, there's a great little story about Arctic foxes at the Brookfield Zoo when I was working there, and it was part of this grant where I did my 20,000 autopsies. and they had a big aquarium there, so I had to spend a couple of years there dealing with all the porpoises and sea turtles and things like that. So I was covering all the species. And so anyway, the keepers came to me and said, look, we're going to bring you 10 baby Arctic foxes, and the mother and father, they were wild-caught Arctic foxes, and then we just had a litter of 10 babies and all born with cleft palate. So they have a bad gene. We want to get rid of them. No, I said, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I've been looking for something like this, and you guys are going to bring me the babies and bring me the adult foxes. I want you to, what were you feeding them? Well, we gave them horse meat, gave the 2 adult foxes horse meat because they're carnivores. They eat meat. They're meat eaters. What, did you give them any vitamins, minerals? No. Okay, well, that's why all the baby foxes were born with cleft palates. It's a birth defect caused by cleft palates. When they go from a flat disc into a tube, at that moment, when their palate is forming, they're missing these nutrients, and it doesn't close completely. When they get cleft palate, cleft lip, and that kind of stuff. So what I want you to do is start feeding the mother and father dog food. And then I want you to get infant formula, milk replacer, like we're going to give orphan baby puppies, and start feeding those baby foxes. When baby foxes get to be 6 months old, they're going to go through puberty. And then I want you to take one female baby and put it with a father. I want you to put one male baby and put it with a mother. And all the other brothers and sisters, you're going to put together, and we'll have 5 pairs of inbreeding. Actually, we'll have 7 pairs of inbreeding with the mother and father. Okay? And you tell me when the baby foxes are born. Okay? Well, it took 6 months for them to get to puberty. And then, of course, the baby foxes, when they were starting solid food, we got them on dog food also. And to make a long story short, we had 100 baby foxes born a year and a half later. And guess what? They were all born perfectly normal, no cleft palates, even though we were seriously inbreeding them, brother and sister, mother and son, father and daughter. And they're all born perfectly normal because we gave them all the nutrients. And this is written up. Yeah, this is written up in scientific journals. It's in the book Rare Herbs and Cures. It's in the book Epigenetics. And it's in my presentation, which I give all the time, in the section on pregnancies. And, I have so many horrible pictures, where they would do abortions of babies born with a terrible, cycloptic eye, one eye in the middle of their forehead, or their brain was sticking out of their skull and things like that. And they would go ahead and do an abortion, and they'd bring me those babies. So I have lots of pictures of horrible birth defects, all of which are preventable by proper diet, maximize absorption, no gluten, no fried food, no processed meats, no oils. And then you throw in the 90 essential nutrients, and there will never be another birth defect.
And the best place to get for the 90 essential nutrients, myself and others who have been mentored by you and working with your supplements for the last 9 years, is takeyoursupplements.com. So if you go to takeyoursupplements.com, you fill out your information and you actually speak to one of us, and we work with you and help you get on Dr. Wallach's protocol. I want to talk about the 4 categories of health and healing in terms of nutrient deficiency, and how you easily help people to reverse diseases. But before we do, I just want to wrap up the Amish story. So you went with Marvin Ropp, and I've met Marvin Ropp, amazing man. I've learned so much from him too. And the two of you went to the Amish communities where there was a lot of infertility and birth defects. What happened?
Okay. Well, basically, the Amish, of course, they grow a lot of grain, wheat, barley, rye, oats. They eat so much of that, breads and spaghetti and noodles and pancakes and waffles and pie crust and cake and so forth. Well, guess what? They have so much gluten, their intestines are all dead. They lost the villi in their intestines, and they couldn't absorb nutrients even if they had them in their food. Now, nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like gold and silver and coal. And so the only way you're going to guarantee you're going to get all 90 essential nutrients is to supplement. Well, even if you supplement, if your villi are all gone, you can't efficiently absorb them. So they're still having problems. And so we took some willing families that had some really serious problems. There was one family, I think it was Idaho, 31-year-old young man, and he was in a wheelchair for 31 years because he was born with severe muscular dystrophy, and they were told there was nothing could be done about it, just give him care that dealt with the symptoms as opposed to there's nothing else you can do. To make a long story short, we put his name is Amos Wiki. This got to be 12, 15 years ago. We put Amos on the 90 essential nutrients. We gave him extra of the nutrients we're missing when you have muscular dystrophy. And of course, I had already published a story about Jerry Lewis and so forth, and everybody knew about that. And Jerry Lewis, of course, we gave him 50 of these Amish kids who were born with muscular dystrophy, and we had cured them. We gave him the charts. He took them to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and before he left the room, they fired him. So he said, well, Wallach's curing all these people with muscular dystrophy. They fired him and took him off the telethon route. This is in 2011. And in 2015, they had to stop the telethon because they couldn't raise a penny without Jerry Lewis being on there. He'd already raised $2 billion on the telethon, but when they took him off the telethon, they couldn't raise a penny. Okay, so anyway, here's Amos Wiki. So we put him on the program, and we cured him. And it was about a year later, Marvin and I are going from colony to colony in Pennsylvania and Indiana and Idaho and Utah and so forth, and Texas and so on, running into all these Amish. And they have annual meetings, and all the farmers get together and they say, okay, this year we're all going to go grow sweet potatoes. Okay, and this year we need extra of this, that, and the other. And so they make all these plans, and they don't have computers and telephones and cell phones and iPads and things. So they have to have these big meetings to communicate this stuff with each other. Otherwise, they're writing letters and so forth, and they don't like to do that. So they rather just get together. So I was going to speak to them because they were having this big gathering of 150 Amish families in Idaho, and Marvin took me there. And this elder, white hair, typical looking Amish guy, probably in his 60s. Before we start, Wallach, very, very accusing tone. Before we start, Wallach, I want to know, you've been working with Amos here, Amos Wiki, you've been working with him for years. For 3 years you worked with him, and he's still sitting in his wheelchair. And Amos Wiki was sleeping in his wheelchair. About 180 pounds, 31 years old. So I said to myself, what would Moses do here? So what I did, I had to be a little bit of a showman, right? And so I stuck my right arm out 180 degrees away from Amos. I stuck my index finger out, and I slowly turned through the face of the audience all around until I was pointing at Amos. And I screamed his name. I said, Amos, get up and dance. And Amos got out of his wheelchair, and he starts doing a little jig. And he runs up the middle aisle, runs around all the outside aisles 3 times, and sits back down in the chair. And everybody, they couldn't even breathe. They couldn't, it was like, it was quiet. They could not breathe. Well, what had happened was, Amos, in 90 days, we had cured him of his muscular dystrophy after 31 years of muscular dystrophy. But he had paid for that wheelchair himself. They don't have health insurance, so he paid for the wheelchair himself, and he didn't want to give it away or sell it or just throw it in the barn. So he took it with him wherever he went, and wherever he went, he would just sit in his own wheelchair. He didn't need it anymore. But the elder Amish guy thought Amos was still in the wheelchair because he still had muscular dystrophy. But no, we cured him in 3 months. Yeah,
I love it.
And so we deal a lot with every kind of autoimmune disease that you can think of. Things like lupus, which Amish used to get a lot of. And, they have the butterfly rash on their face, and it's kind of like, fibromyalgia with a butterfly rash in your face. They call it lupus, an autoimmune disease. It's really just a manifestation of gluten. They can't absorb nutrients. And one nutritional deficiency causes eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea. When you have a deficiency of that nutrient, and also you get ulcerative colitis, your villi go away, you get diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome. And so basically, these diseases are all gone in the Amish community now. And they used to eat so much wheat and barley, rye, and oats because that's what they would grow to feed their livestock and also to sell in the markets. So now they know they need to live like Asians, and they eat rice. They can't have fried rice, but they can eat wild rice and white rice and yellow rice and red rice. They can eat sweet potatoes. They can eat their dairy. They can have all the vegetables they want. They can have buckwheat, which is not wheat. They can have millet. Okay. They can have corn and so forth. And so all the diseases they used to get, they don't get anymore.
I love it.
Because we got them off of gluten, got them on the 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids, and 2/3 of the 90 essential nutrients are minerals. Okay? Plants do not make minerals. They can make vitamins, they can make amino acids, they can make fatty acids, but they cannot make minerals. Plants only need 3 elements from the soil, and farmers actually get paid by tonnage. They don't get paid by the nutritional value of the food. They get paid by tonnage. So when you look at all commercial fertilizers, they only have 3 minerals in it. They don't have 60. They only have 3. And so when they get, everything ready to harvest, they harvest it and they sell it and it goes to the market and we get 3 minerals in our food.
Can you imagine what our health would be like as a globe if farmers got paid for the nutritional quality of their crop and if doctors got paid for results?
Well, yeah, it would be a totally different story.
Yeah, exactly. There'd be no disease and everyone would be listening to you.
I can tell you when it all happened. 3:00 in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, on Pearl Street in New York City, in the bluff overlooking the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, Thomas Edison pulled the switch on the first commercial electric generating plant and lit up part of New York City. Within 10 years, 100 new diseases occurred that had never happened before in America. All mineral deficiency diseases. And doctors are telling people, oh, these are genetic. Because before 3:00 in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, nobody had electricity. Everybody had wood stoves. And they were putting their wood ashes into their gardens. And wood ashes are more than just carbon. Wood ashes are the minerals that are left when you burn the carbon in the wood, or the corn stalks, or whatever it is you're burning, coal. And so people put their wood ashes in their garden as fertilizer. And if you were in a place where there was 15 minerals in the soil, there was 15 minerals in that wood ashes. If you're in a place where they had 25 minerals in the soil, there was 25 minerals in the wood ashes. And so people did much better when they were putting their wood ashes in their gardens. I'm going to give you one more bit of story here, and I'll turn it back to you. And that is, most people don't know this, Ashley, but slaves lived longer than plantation owners.
Wow.
There were more 100-year-old slaves than there were 100-year-old white people. Most chief slaves who were actually running the plantation operations outlived 3 generations of white plantation owners who would die in their 40s and 50s. These slaves are 110, 112, still running the show. That's because the plantation owners wanted to be like kings and dukes. And so they just ate the meat, steaks and roast, okay, loins, that kind of stuff. And they made the slaves eat the chicken feet, the pig's feet, the livers, the brains, the heart, and the lungs, which had all the trace minerals in it, plus the sulfur and the calcium and the magnesium. And they would put the bones from what they would eat onto the stove at night in water and just simmer it all night and make bone broth soup.
And get more minerals.
The white people, yeah, and the white people didn't drink that or eat that. That was all the slaves. And so that's why there was Uncle Thomas. They couldn't call him Sir Tom or Sir, let's see here, Remus. They call him Uncle Remus because that was what should I say? They were giving him some kind of heroic name for living so long and running the plantations. So being an Uncle Tom was a good thing. Being an Uncle Remus was a good thing. Being an Aunt Jemima was a good thing because they were living to be 100 eating the things that the plantation owners thought were not even fit to feed a dog. Only slaves could eat them.
And they were getting more nutrition because of it. That's fascinating.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. Well, I love how you look at through history, different cultures, and the rate of disease, and how they, you can link it all back to that the people who have the lowest rate of disease and the highest rate of longevity are the people who are getting all their minerals or getting more minerals or getting more nutrition. That's very fascinating. I just love it. Now, it's been complicated for people to understand how to reverse disease, but you, in the last few years, in working with so many wonderful experts, have devised something to make it really simple so that just the average person who, or even health coaches who want to jump in and use your protocol, not only for themselves, but also for their clients or for their friends and family, that they could understand how to figure out what nutrients their client or their selves or their friends or family is missing. Can you discuss the 4 categories of health and dive into how we can utilize them to help reverse disease?
Yeah, well, you have to appreciate that all tissue has stem cells. No matter what tissue in the body, every tissue in the body has stem cells. And the purpose of the stem cells is to make new cells when the old ones die, because none of our body cells live forever, so they have a lifespan. When they might only live 6 weeks or 6 months or 2 years or whatever it is, then the stem cells will replace them with a new cell. Also, if you have an injury, like a trauma, an injury where you get a bruise or a cut or a burn or something like that, your stem cells will repair those injured cells and make new ones when the old ones die. They all require the 90 essential nutrients. Okay, and this is why people who live in areas that have lots of minerals in the soil and eat food grown there, they actually have much longer lives. They tend to be disease-free and are very strong and can resist the plague and all that kind of stuff, which everybody else gets. Okay? And people say, well, where are the longest lived people on Earth? Well, the longest lived people on Earth come from Hunza, which is where the Giltar Glacier is, which is in China. Okay? And there's a place called Pakistan in China, and the Giltar Glacier and Hunza is in between them. Okay, these are the longest lived people on Earth. And again, this is where the Hunzas, they didn't know what they were doing. They just drank the water that came out from underneath the glaciers. They irrigated with the water that came out from underneath the glaciers. But the glacial water had the minerals in it because the glaciers are grinding up all the rocks. It just so happens all the rocks there have 78 minerals in them. Okay, and so also we have this is where we get our plant minerals, is from these types of deposits. There's like a half a dozen on Earth, and we get our minerals from these types of deposits, which come from the ocean. Okay, and it's not like rock. These are not rock. These are plants. But and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. And then also, we can get these things from the pink Himalayan salt. In the Himalayan mountains, when the oceans dried up, all the salt and minerals that were in the oceans there piled up down there and became the pink Himalayan salt. They have 84 minerals in them. Okay. Now, actually, before I kind of answer your question, I'm going to kind of go backwards a little bit. So when I answer the question, it'll make sense.
Okay.
Okay. The carbon dioxide is going up in the air.
Right.
And all the environmentalists are convinced that it's due to fossil fuels, for gasoline and oil and all that kind of stuff for cars and
cow
things
farts.
Things like coal, burning coal and oil and gasoline and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the carbon dioxide is coming from. And they want everybody to drive Tesla cars and have all these hydroelectric plants and everything. Well, going back to the 1920s, they began to put in hydroelectric dams. Well, today, to make a long story short, we have 1 million dams. We have 1 million hydroelectric dams. We have 2 million dams for irrigation and water conservation. We have 400 million farm ponds that intercept the flow from creeks that would go into tributaries that dump these silt and minerals and volcanic ash into the big rivers, which would then go feed the ocean and feed the reefs. Okay, millions, not thousands, millions, these dams. Well, here's what happened is they shut off the food supply to the algae that were eating the carbon dioxide. Algae makes up more plant life than all the plants on Earth, on the dry land Earth. Algae in the ocean has a bigger plant mass than that. Well, algae, the purpose of it, if there is a purpose, was to eat the carbon dioxide in the air, throw out oxygen into the atmosphere, and then take the carbon out of the carbon dioxide and make carbon chains like amino acids, carbohydrates, sugars, fiber, stuff like that for plants like kelp and that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we dammed up the rivers with 1 million hydroelectric dams, 2 million water conservation dams, and 400 million farm ponds. We cut off the food. So only man has the power to cut off the food supply to the ocean, cut off the food supply to the reefs. I gave a lecture last year, a little more than a year ago. It was August of 2019 to Tesla at their annual meeting. And 2/3 of my lecture, I had maps of all the places where the reefs have died and showed where they had dammed up all the rivers. I have pictures of the maps, and then where the rivers were dammed up. And in Queensland and Australia, where the Great Barrier Reef is, they dammed up all the rivers, were feeding the volcanic ash into the ocean on the western side of the Great Barrier Reef, and it killed the Great Barrier Reef by making hydroelectric there. So we're going to get a grant. We're working on getting a grant. We're going to rebuild the Queensland, okay? We're going to rebuild the Great Barrier Reef. We're going to leave them have their electric dams. We're just going to go around them or through them or over them with augers, get the silt back to the algae that was feeding the Great Barrier Reefs. And in 90 days' time, we will have rebuilt the Great Barrier Reef and proved to the environmentalists that it was the dams that caused the problems. Okay? So that's why, anybody dealing with electricity, okay, and they want to make more electricity, it's actually safer to burn coal than it is to dam up the rivers, okay? Just think of all the diseases we've gotten since we went away from wood ashes for fertilizing our plants, and we're using electricity now. We got like 1,000 new diseases that never existed before because of the nutritional deficiencies.
To summarize what you said, because it is such an important, that was that moment, you said that exact moment that Edison did that, the exact moment was their pivotal change that happened in our world, because until then we were cooking with fire, basically. We were cooking with wood. We were putting
wood and coal.
But if you look at old, like a few 100-year-old recipes for bread, for example, they'll call for wood ash, that they'll call for the white ash to be added to the food that they used it as a thickening agent in stews. We used to eat minerals, and we used to put them in our garden. And this was minerals were part of our everyday supplementation. We didn't know it. We didn't know that it was. We just did it, and it kept us healthy until we traded in our wood stove for the electric stove. A few generations later, plus everything we've done with commercial farming, we're not getting the 60 essential minerals. And now, and I've heard you talk about the dams before, but it really, really hit me today. What we saw happen with our bodies over the last 100 years in terms of mineral deficiency, and the rates of disease go up. Now we're doing it to our oceans. Now isn't it 70% of the 70% of the earth is covered in water, and we've
That's correct.
starved the minerals. We've cut off the mineral supply because of all these dams, where the food supply, the mineral supply to the algae, and the algae is the most important plant on our earth to help us breathe oxygen and create a homeostasis.
Something usable from the carbon dioxide. Yeah.
Right. And what we've done is what we did to our bodies over the last 100 years is what we're doing to the entire ocean right now. And it all comes
Yeah.
back to minerals are the most important, they're most important thing for our health. That, yeah, of course, vitamins are, but I've heard you say you can accidentally get vitamins, you eat enough vegetables, right? But you can't accidentally get enough minerals because of all the things
Plants
that you've
don't make
talked
minerals.
about. Right. The
Yeah.
plants have to
Plants don't
be
make minerals.
right. They have to be grown in minerally rich soil, which is very hard to secure, especially because of the farming practices of the last 100 years and the fact that we're not
Yeah.
remineralizing our
And
soil.
after a few years, the minerals in the soil are gone because the plants suck them out of the soil. Now, Grandma, as you point out, used to eat wood ashes, and she'd put them in the bread dough. She'd put them in the soup and that kind of stuff. And when she got crazy cravings when she was pregnant, she'd go out in the yard with a spoon and eat dirt, and she'd eat more wood ashes when she was pregnant. It's called pica.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, during the Second World War, when they came up with baby formula so mothers could work in the factory so they didn't have to breastfeed their babies, babies developed what was called cribbing. They would chew on the rails in the cribs because they were minerally deficient. They were looking for minerals, and so they would put their hands on the crib rails and chew on the rails, and they call it cribbing. When horses are minerally deficient and they chew on the top rail of a barn stall, they call it cribbing, because the horse looks like he's doing what the kids are doing in the crib. Okay. Now, Grandma didn't know why, but she knew that the terrible cravings she had would go away when she would eat wood ashes and put them in the food and that kind of stuff. Also, obesity was not a big problem in the world until electricity came along. I mean, if you wanted to see an obese person, you had to go to the carnival or the circus, and they would have the fat lady, who was 300 pounds. Okay. Other than seeing a fat lady in the circus or the carnival, you never see a fat person because they're eating minerals because they're putting the wood ashes into their food. And when you have pica, you're driven to want to eat, even though you just had a 5,000 calorie dinner.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing minerals. You are going to eat and eat and eat and eat 6 desserts and all that kind of stuff. And that's when the clever guys came along and said, Grandma's out there eating dirt. We need to make pretzels and potato chips and corn puffs and all these desserts and sell them in the stores. And she'll buy those desserts and eat those rather than eat dirt and ashes. And that way we can make some money. We're not making any money with her eating dirt and wood ashes. Because entrepreneurs notice that Grandma's eating that stuff because she was craving them.
Why is it that people will crave salty foods or sweet foods when their body really wants minerals?
Because they don't know, they've never been taught that craving is telling them to eat minerals. Okay, now, if you've ever been around cattle farms, beef farms, they put these red trace mineral salt blocks out in the pasture on the big corrals.
Mm-hmm.
The cattle will lick the salt. They'll lick the salt, but they're getting the trace minerals at the same time because they need the salt. All vertebrates require sodium chloride for digestion and make stomach acid and all that kind of stuff. Now, here's a funny piece to it. You go back to the years 3,600 BC. 3,600 BC, there was a healer, in Egypt who began to give people dried seaweed. And he noticed that the ones that had goiter, when he gave them dry seaweed, their goiter would go away. Well, that went on until 1930. That's a big, long time, almost 4,000 years, okay? About 1930, a chemist was doing analyses of seaweed. It was getting rid of goiter in people, and he noticed that one of the biggest things in the seaweed that would cure goiter was iodine. That was in 1875. Then comes along 1920. There was a salt company in New York. They're selling a lot of salt, but they read about this iodine, which is a big problem all around the world. So they put iodine in salt, and they called it iodized salt. You've heard of iodized salt.
Mm-hmm.
And we eliminated goiter in the world with iodized salt. Because everybody salted their food because they were deficient in salt, so they would eat salt, and with iodine, they got iodized salt. Well, just before the Second World War, all these doctors are getting trained in medical schools, being told that salt is what creates high blood pressure. So they're running around telling people, get rid of the salt out of your diet, we'll lower your blood pressure, so I have to take drugs. But they didn't say, be sure you're taking a supplement that has iodine in it, so goiter came back with a vengeance. That's why we have so much stuff going on with our thyroid glands now, because there's no, even if they do have salt out there with iodine in it, people are told don't use salt.
Fascinating. And you pointed out that our body actually needs salt in order to make hydrochloric acid, and people who are deficient
for digestion.
Right. And if we don't have enough hydrochloric acid, then we get heartburn, and then a doctor will put someone on antacids, which just makes the problem worse. And then they
Correct.
can't digest, so then they can't absorb. So now they're going to become more nutrient deficient quicker, and then they can get on more drugs. It's just a perfect path to make the pharmaceutical company money.
Exactly right. Well, that's why we have in our savor division, our spice division, we have the pink Himalayan salt. I use that in my breakfast food, my lunch, my dinners. I use our pink Himalayan salt, and I take it with me when I go out on the road. And it has 84 minerals in there. That's in addition to our sports drink, which has 78 minerals in it. And, our plant-derived minerals has 78 minerals in it. We have it in capsules and liquids and powders and oh my! and so
Right.
there's so many diseases that are very simply gotten rid of. For instance, like diabetes. Diabetes, you don't need to go to a doctor to see if you have diabetes. You go to a pharmacy without a prescription, you get the test strips for urine, you get the test strips for blood, and for $1.50 for each test strip, in 3 minutes, you'll know if you're diabetic or not. And you didn't have to pay $100 for an office call. You didn't have to pay $200 for a lab fee. It just cost you $3 for $2.50 test strips. And you know if you have diabetes or not. And then, of course, if you have diabetes, we have what we call the Healthy Blood Sugar Pack. And if you've had it for 30 years, in 30 days, you'll actually be an ex-diabetic. I get people, and of course, the scorecard for how well you're doing, how well you're managing your diabetes is the A1C. It's supposed to be down around 5. And I get people, their A1C has been 15 to 19 for 20, 30 years. Okay, and we get them on our program, our Healthy Blood Sugar Pack, and get them on gluten so they can absorb everything. And in, say, 6 weeks, their A1C is now 4, and they don't have diabetes anymore. And they go into their annual or their quarterly physical, and the doctor says, we got to run your A1C again. It came out 4. That can't be right, because it's been 19 for 25 years. So they rerun it, and she said, well, I don't know why, but your A1C is 4. It's a miracle. I've never seen that before. And then they just turn and walk out the door. And I asked the patient, I said, well, did the doctor ask what you were doing? He said, no, he just says it's a miracle and walked out the door. That's because he didn't want to be responsible. He didn't want to be knowing what you did, so he'd have to give it to his other patients.
Well, that happened with me. I used to have type 2 diabetes, and I got on your protocol for healthy blood sugar, and it went away so fast it made my head spin. I was feeling so good. And the pica, I thought it was part of my blood sugar problem. I had constant gnawing hunger. I was hangry. Every 45 minutes I had to eat. And then within the same day I started taking your plant-derived minerals, my hunger went away. And I just burst into tears like of joy. I was so excited. And my blood sugar started balancing very quickly. My adrenal fatigue subsided very quickly. Within 2 years, we naturally conceived our child, and my polycystic ovarian syndrome had gone away. Like, it was bam, bam, bam. Things were resolving. It was great. And that, I got so excited. I changed my career and became a complete advocate of your work and of nutrition and of the fact that we can reverse disease. So I've traveled with you. I've watched you and helped you or set up lectures, and I've met hundreds of people that have worked on your protocols. I have personally seen people reverse asthma, adult onset asthma, arthritis, MS, kidney failure, COPD, infertility. I've met people who were supposed to go in for surgeries to have knees replaced or kidneys removed or heart surgery, and then through your protocols, they got so healthy they no longer needed to have those procedures. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes, nutrition and diet, and then it takes, sometimes it takes a few more months, or it takes adding in some herbal support. But stick with it. I highly recommend listeners go to takeyoursupplements.com and get on Dr. Wallach's protocol. So there's these 4 categories that you came up with: the soft tissue, hard tissue, blood sugar, and the healthy nervous system. And that there are a bunch of different symptoms that someone could look at. There's like a checklist, and they could look at and go, oh, my problem is this. And like an example being, if someone has cracked heels, that they have a soft tissue, the nutrients that support soft tissue, specifically like essential fatty acids, they have that deficiency. But they might need further support in terms of like digestion if they don't have a gallbladder, in order to fully digest and absorb their EFAs. But could you talk a bit about how you've made this very simple so that people can get on the right protocol with all the essential nutrients their body is missing in order to correct their problem?
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, and of course, again, my thesis for my postdoctoral fellowship represents 20,000 autopsies, and I've done over 32,000 autopsies. That's what my thesis is in the Smithsonian Institute's National Treasure. And when I would get bodies, whether they're humans or animals, if they were vertebrate, they would have the same external signs of the internal deficiency disease. Whether it was diabetes, or if it was Parkinson's disease, or if it was thyroid issues, or kidney failure, or congestive heart failure, or if they had irritable bowel syndrome, they had colitis, all these kind of things. And of course, then they would have skin problems, eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis. And I'm saying, well, what causes these things? I would go look up, and sure enough, there has been a paper written about it 25 years earlier, or 100 years earlier, that they would make the connection between a nutrient deficiency and that particular health issue. And so I began to write these things up and do handouts at meetings. And I usually, after a while, I had enough of those handouts. I just put them together in a book. The first book, of course, was Let's Play Doctor. It goes into 600 different diseases and tells you what signs to look at. For instance, my most recent book now, 50 years later, is It's All in Your Head. It talks about the 25 different diseases you get when you have osteoporosis in the skull. That's another thing that doctors never talk about, is osteoporosis of the skull. They talk about osteoporosis of your legs and your vertebrae and your pelvis and your shoulders, but that's it. They never talk about osteoporosis of the skull. Well, there's 12 pairs of cranial nerves, and when you have osteoporosis of the skull, because your skull gets thicker and bigger when you have osteoporosis, it fills up those tunnels that those nerves go through, and the spinal cord coming out of the back of the skull, and squeeze them, and you get all these diseases. So I ask people questions, okay, when they come in and they tell me they're losing their vision, and the doctors can't figure out why, because they don't have glaucoma, they don't have pressure in an eye, they don't have cataracts, they don't have macular degeneration, and but they're slowly going blind. They have to change their eye prescription every couple of months because it's getting worse and worse and worse, no matter what the eye doctor does. And so I learned, if I ask them, do you have ringing in your ear? Do you have tinnitus? It's called tinnitus, that tone. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, I have that all the time. And do you ever have dizziness or balance problems? Oh, man, if I get up too fast, the world will spin. I'll fall down. So I have to get up very slowly and stand there for a moment before I take a step. I do have vertigo, okay? Well, that's because your skull is squeezing the auditory branch of the eighth cranial nerve to get that tone, and you will gradually get deaf. The skull is also squeezing the vestibular branch of your eighth cranial nerve, okay? So the tone is called tinnitus. The dizziness, vertigo, okay? Vertigo or Meniere's disease. Now it's called Wallach's vertigo. Okay, because it's not a genetic thing; it's a simple nutritional deficiency. But also that eye thing, what was happening, the skull was squeezing the second cranial nerve, which is the optic nerve, and slowly causing the optic nerve and the artery that goes into the back of the eye, formed in the brain, goes to the skull, to the back of the eye. And they would slowly lose their vision, didn't have any of the classic eye problems. So I learned by rebuilding the skull, I could get their vision to come back. And I actually won a wager. I don't know if I told you that story.
I don't think so.
Okay, this is a great story. Very, it has to do with these sort of things. I was in Salt Lake City giving a lecture, and about, 50 people in the audience, and we were talking, gosh, got to be 25, 30 years ago. And there's, say, 30, 40 people in the audience. And when I was done, the guy in the front row says, Dr. Wallach, my mother is in her 70s, and she's been legally blind for 8 years. Is there anything you can do for her? She's got this terrible macular degeneration. It's caused her blindness. She's been legally blind 6, 8, 10 years. Okay, I can fix that. Well, this guy jumps up in the back of the room and says, Wallach, you're a liar. I said, well, who are you? He says, well, I said, who are you? He says, well, I'm an eye surgeon, and I diagnose legal people who are legally blind because they have really severe, advanced, aggressive forms of macular degeneration. And they go blind, there's nothing to do about it. You just got to accept blindness at that point. I said, well, sir, let's have a wager. Why don't you bring me 12 of your patients that you have diagnosed, so there's no question about the diagnosis, that you have diagnosed with macular degeneration. They've been legally blind 6, 8, 10 years. He says, you're on. The next day, he brings me 27 charts. He says, pick your 12. I said, why pick 12? Let's take all 27. He says, you're on. He says, well, what's the wager? I said, well, if I win, if I can cure these people in 90 days, if I can do it, it'll happen in 90 days. So if I can cure these people in 90 days, they go from being legally blind to be able to read 20/20 in 90 days. You have to pay for their supplements. You have to apologize in public for calling me a liar. You have to buy me one of the most expensive steaks at Ruth Chris's Steakhouse. Okay? And you're going to have to, let's see here. There's one other thing. You're going to have to buy me the most expensive French red wine in America, a bottle of it. He says, you're on. I said, I'll take all 27. He says, well, how are we going to get him the information? I said, well, I'm going to write up a little protocol. It'll be per 100 pounds of body weight, and I'll call and talk to each one, and I'll mail each one, so you need to give me their addresses so I know this is really happening. Okay? He says, you're on. So we went at it. We gave him the 90 essential nutrients and the anti-inflammatories, and MSM and vitamin D3 and so on. And so we went at it. In 90 days, 25 of the 27 could read 20/20. It took 2 more weeks for the other 2. So he paid off on all counts.
I love it.
And so this is why we came up with a book, It's All in Your Head. We talk about these 25 different diseases you get. You lose your sense of smell, or you lose your sense of taste. And, you've heard of Bell's palsy, that's the squeezing of the 7th cranial nerve, the facial nerve, right, when you have osteoporosis. And then there's, let's see here, what's another easy one? Another easy one is Bell's palsy. Trigeminal neuralgia. Trigeminal neuralgia. You get your pain in your face, and you can't make saliva and everything because the 5th cranial nerve is being squeezed. Okay, and then people, when they get older, their voice tends to change. They're talking like this.
Right.
Okay, and that happens because their 9th cranial nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, which controls the vocal cords, are being squeezed. Beginning to get the picture?
Fascinating. It's all osteoporosis of the skull.
Of the skull, right. And that's why we have the book now. It's All in Your Head. And we're selling these by the hundreds every day now. It was on the best-selling list, top number one bestseller in ebook for the ebook companies. Amazon, let's see here, Apple, Kindle. It's going viral, this book.
I love it. And now you have a new DVD that just came out. If we were to watch it, what would we learn?
Okay, the new DVD is Your Doctor Killing You with a question mark. And it goes into these things that are supposed to be genetic and supposed to be autoimmune and so forth. And they're really just nutritional deficiencies. And this was a Zoom video, started out as a Zoom video. And the person who interviewed me, like you're doing now, was a academic pharmacist. And it's one of those things where pharmacist Keith Abel, I mean, he was really on me when I was saying, I can cure this, I can cure this, I can cure this. Okay. And I always give references to, make him satisfied. Well, while we're doing the Zoom, he goes online, he's a techie, and he gets that article and he puts the cover page with the abstract and the authors and the title on it right next to my face. So when you look at this Zoom, you're getting the reference right next to my face on this DVD. Okay, is your doctor killing you? Okay, and of course he is.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we have the two CDs set to 2 hours, 2 1-hour CDs, and it was a 2-hour lecture. And I was lecturing to a big church up in Baltimore, Maryland, with Linda. Okay, and it was such an audience participation because there was 1,000 people in that church. It was really great. So those are the two new tools. Okay, is your doctor killing you? Question mark. And Rare Forbidden Cures. It goes along with the book Rare Forbidden Cures, and of course the new book is It's All in Your Head.
Thank you. Very good. Now, recently it just launched a few months ago, and I've already had several of my listeners participate. There's a health coach program where it's all online, and it's very, very affordable, and anyone, you don't have to have any previous knowledge about holistic health. It goes through and teaches them exactly what your protocols are, and how to help yourself, your friends, your family. But also it's great for health coaches. It's great for even naturopathic doctors, or any kind of doctor could go through this protocol, go through this health course, and they can learn exactly your protocols. And you have these 4 categories. So it goes through the list of the different symptoms, and then it relates back to the nutrient deficiencies. And I love that you saw this, that you saw that when you did all of these autopsies and the millions of histopathologies and blood panels, you were able to see that nutrient deficiency was the root cause of 900 diseases, and that each disease you could replicate it. You could see either in animals, if you starved an animal of a nutrient, you could predict what disease they would get based on the nutrient they were not getting. And same with humans. And you could see in certain symptoms, exterior symptoms, you could see that, like I use the examples of cracked heels because it's so common, but that there are many symptoms that an MD would not consider relevant, and that these symptoms are actually red flags showing us that we have nutrient deficiency.
That's correct.
In terms of this course, the best way to go about joining it is go to takeyoursupplements.com, because once you communicate with us, then we set you on that path and help you to sign up and learn all of Dr. Wallach's protocols, done in a really easy to use way, which I'm very excited about, because I have been studying your work. And listen, how I learned the protocols is you've been doing radio shows for many years, answering questions. And
30 years.
Right. I went back and I listened to all the recordings I could find every day, 8 hours a day. I put them on. My first year and a half working with the supplements, I had it playing in my house, and I would listen to every single archive I could get my hands on, and I'd hear the problem, and then I'd try to predict the different course of action that you'd help them take. And what was really cool is that listening to it, because I listened to several episodes in one day, a few months later, someone would call back and they would say, okay, I don't have MS anymore, but I'm calling for my sister. And then you would, so many people would call back and tell you that they've had progress, or they'd come back and they'd say, okay, my migraines are gone, but my hands are still shaking. And then you'd correct their protocol. But all this information has been put together in a really easy to use and easy to understand, easy to learn way. Do you have time to answer a few questions for the listeners? The listeners have submitted. Great.
Okay.
Well,
I have one thing I need to do first, and that is to thank you so much for putting together that training. And so I just appreciate you and respect you, and look forward to working with you for the next couple of 100 years.
Well, that's it. When my husband and I learned from you it's actually almost 10 years ago. And you said, we have the genetic potential to live to be 120. My husband and I were like, well, let's do this. We're going to do this. Let's do this. Let's live to be 120. And so we're right there with you. I'm very, very excited about that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Mike Park is one of our listeners whose son has a SCI, which he got like a fever, and all of a sudden his legs stopped working, and they think it was like a viral infection of his nervous system, and he has neuropathy, and he would like to know, is there a protocol that that can help stimulate the neurogenesis, nerve growth factor, and help with neuropathy in people with SCI?
Okay. And so he's got kind of low back stuff. Is that what it is?
Yeah, he's a 5-year-old child who no longer has use of his legs because of this, I believe, viral infection that happened to his spinal cord. Okay.
Yeah, and it may just be osteoporosis of the skull, because newborn babies can have osteoporosis of the skull. When you read this book, it'll make you weep and cry. Okay, he's 5 years old. Now, I bet his skull is squeezing his spinal cord is what's going on here, right?
Fascinating.
Yeah, it makes you take a deep breath, doesn't it?
Really does.
Okay, so do we have any idea how much this little kid weighs?
Probably about 40 pounds.
Okay, so let's get him off all the bad foods. Everybody in the family's got to get rid of fried foods, processed meats, oils, glutens, wheat, butter, granules, and sugar. He's got to live like an Asian, live on rice and sweet potatoes and millets, and you can make bread and pancakes and waffles and all kinds of stuff out of rice and sweet potatoes or white potatoes. You can have all that, okay? And the vegetables and the fish. I like the smoked Alaska salmon. I have that almost every morning for breakfast. And that's a good thing. And plus my 3 poached eggs and soft yolks and so on. And I do have rice. I have 3 ice cream scoops full of rice. And then I have all my pills and my liquids and so forth. Let's say this kid weighs 40, 50 pounds. Let's get him 1 healthy brain and heart pack that'll last him 2 months. It'll be a half a dose of everything every day. So he'll get a quarter of a dose of everything at breakfast and dinner. I also want him to have the MSM. I want him to take 3 MSM a day, 1 with each meal. So that bottle of MSM is going to last 2 months. I also want him to get the vitamin D3. I want him to take 3 of those twice a day. So it'll be 2 bottles a month of vitamin D3. I want him to have the glucogel. He can have the liquid glucogel. It'd be an ounce twice a day. Put it in his shake. Or if he wants the capsules, he could take 5 capsules twice a day. Okay. And then, of course, he needs to be using our pink Himalayan salt. When they go out and eat, he can take his, we have what we call the mineral caps. 1 capsule of mineral caps has the same amount of minerals in it as 1 ounce of the liquid minerals. And then I want him to have 6 eggs a day. He can put them in a shake. He can have them soft boiled, soft poached, soft scrambled butter. Or he can whip them up. They can whip them up with a blender and put them in one of our protein shakes. So this kid, he had an infection, they said, that caused this problem.
Yes. He is about 5 years old, and the infection happened, I believe it was about a year ago. So he's now in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it happened when he was already 4 years old or so. Okay. Yeah, well, let's see what happens in 90 days by doing all this. So he's got to make sure there's no gluten in his life. No wheat, no butter, and oats. No cheat day, no 1 cheat meal a month. No gluten. Everybody, all the other brothers and sisters, Mom and dad, everybody's got to get rid of gluten. And you need to ask them, did he have any skin problems as well? Eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea. Does he ever complain about ringing in his ears? Oh, tinnitus, right?
So if he complains of ringing in his ears, that would be one of the symptoms of the osteoporosis of the skull.
That's correct.
And then the skin problem, is that gluten related?
And it's the gluten causes damage to the villi in the intestines, so you cannot absorb nutrients. And the nutrient is missing when you get eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea. You get things like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, diverticulitis. All of those types of diseases are caused by a deficiency of the same nutrient that causes eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, and rosacea. Same nutrient deficiency causes all that. And then when you have damaged your intestines, I want to get into, if we have time, I want to get into a little bit of, again, the COVID-19. Okay?
Okay.
But this kid has a great possibility of recovering 100%.
I'm very excited for that.
You'll know within 6 months.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we'll definitely follow up. Mike has been an active listener and a member of our Learn to Health Facebook group, and he's been sharing his son's journey. So I'm excited to help Mike get on that protocol. And for everyone who's listening, please go to takeyoursupplements.com to get on these protocols that Dr. Wallach is talking about. The next question is, can we fix lazy eye or weak eye muscles? Is there a way to support eye health and reverse lazy eye?
And how old is this person?
You know what? I don't know this. I can, looking at they submitted it in the Facebook group, and looking at her picture, she looks to be in her 30s.
Yeah. Well, the fourth cranial nerves and the sixth cranial nerves are the ones that control the eyes muscles. So if you have osteoporosis of the skull, you get lazy eye because it's squeezing those nerves.
I'm really starting to grasp how prevalent these problems are. The osteoporosis of the skulls is producing so many problems because it's a mineral deficiency and nutrient, not just mineral, but
well, it is mineral deficiency. It's nutrient deficiency. I mean, how many doctors have told their patients, "Look, you have osteoporosis of the skull. That's why you have Bell's palsy." No,
none.
They just say we're going to give you we're going to give you steroids. And they'll get some benefit for a while, but it'll come right back because they haven't dealt with the basic problem.
So then the problem isn't a weak eye muscle; it's that the nerve is being impinged and is sending a weak signal.
Either sending a weak signal or an overactive signal.
Very interesting.
Either one.
So your approach for her would be to follow a protocol that supports healthy bones and joints.
Yeah. So what you do is, and so you don't know how much this lady weighs or anything? Or?
I do not.
Okay. Well, let's say per 100 pounds of body weight, one healthy brain and heart pack. Let's see here, 5 glucogel capsules twice a day. MSM, 3 of those tablets twice a day. Just in case, I would also throw in the Ultimate Daily Classic tablets for circulation in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
3 of those twice a day.
Excellent. Thank you. Lauren wants to know about raising estrogen and testosterone in herself naturally. Her doctor says her estrogen and her testosterone is low. What can we do to balance and increase healthy hormone levels?
Okay, how old is she? What does she weigh?
I do not know what she weighs.
Okay.
But she looks to be in her late 20s.
Oh, okay. So a young person. Okay. Yeah. Well, again, she got to get rid of gluten. She's got to get rid of all the fried foods, processed meats, oils, glutens, wheat, butter, anodes. Absolutely no sugar. And then per 100 pounds of body, maybe 1 healthy brain and heart pack per month. 3 eggs with soft yolks twice a day. Hard-boiled eggs won't count. Because 95% of estrogen is cholesterol. 95% of testosterone is cholesterol. Okay. And so avoiding cholesterol and taking statin drugs will make these things happen in people. Well, I'm avoiding cholesterol because my family all had issues with their heart. Okay, well, your doctor needs to be put in jail. Okay. Okay, so, at any rate, then they need also the de-stress capsules, share those twice a day, Ultimate Niacin Plus, one of those twice a day. And anything going on with the brain and spinal cord needs to have the Ultimate Daily Classic tablets. Now, there's one other thing that has to be done for the testosterone and the estrogen. We have a product called Xera Test, XERA-Test, TEST, which is the food for the Sertoli cells in the testicles that make the testosterone. But they need the cholesterol and all the 90 essential nutrients to be able to work. So don't waste your money on the Xera Test if you're not giving them the 90 essential nutrients and the eggs, and the cheese and so on.
Okay.
And then the same thing is true for the lady, for the female part, for the estrogen, for the estrogen and progesterone, they need Xera-Fem. Let's see here. I can personally testify. I'm 81 years old, and I look like I'm 50. I sound like I'm 50, and sexually, I act like I'm 25.
That's a very important point to make. Many men in their 30s and 40s are experiencing erectile dysfunction, and it's a nutrient deficiency.
That's correct. And especially cholesterol. But remember, testosterone is 95% by weight cholesterol. So they got to give up the statin drugs. What they need to do is wrap up the statin drugs and give them to their doctor with love.
Here, you take these if they're so good for you.
Yes. Yeah. And, I was going to give them to somebody else because I'm going another direction here. But, I thought, who do I really think a lot of? I'll give them to you, Doc. Please take them.
So funny. I love it. I love that we could take someone who is struggling with hormones and show them through food and through supplements. Mm-hmm. They can easily balance it. And it's exactly what happened to me. Leslie says she has scleroderma, right heart failure, and pulmonary hypertension. She's been vegetarian for several years, eating not junk food, but very healthy food. She's 117 pounds and 5'7". And she says her autoimmune disease is progressing. She would love to support her body and no longer having these problems.
Okay, we can do that. Get rid of all the bad foods, no fried foods, no processed meats, no oils, no glutens, no wheat brought around, no sugar. And everybody in the household, dog, cat, bird, fish, spouse, renter, roommate, mom and dad, brother, kids, everybody's got to be drop dead gluten-free. Because what do vegetarians eat a lot of?
Gluten. A lot of it.
Grain.
Yes.
There you go. And that's why she has all these diseases that doctors are telling her are autoimmune. Because even if she was supplementing, she can't absorb it because her villi are gone out of her intestines. I'm gonna tell you a story here. I don't think I told you this yet. There's a guy by the name of Herman Cain. Did I tell you that story?
Oh gosh, the name sounds so familiar. Go ahead and tell the listeners.
Okay, well, Herman Cain, CEO of Godfather's Pizza. And the last day of June of this year, of 2020, he was diagnosed with COVID-19. He's a billionaire, 74 years old, and he had respiratory symptoms. Mm-hmm. They put him in a hospital. They're giving him oxygen, and they're giving him IVs of antiviral drugs. On the 29th of July, 29 days after they put him in the hospital, he dies. He's a billionaire. Okay, CEO of Godfather's Pizza, has all the free pizza he can get. Gluten alert, gluten alert, gluten alert, the crust. And he also had 5 pre-existing conditions because of the gluten, couldn't absorb nutrients. I don't know if he was supplementing or not because they didn't say in the newspaper releases. But when they did the autopsy 3 days later after he died, they said he didn't have a respiratory infection, which is what they were treating him for, but he did have respiratory distress clinically, but he didn't have a respiratory pneumonia. from the viruses or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's because the capillaries in his lungs were filled with clusters of a weird clot of red blood cells that didn't have platelets in them. Well, he didn't have any platelets because his bone marrow was dead, because he couldn't get nutrition, because his intestines were dead, because he's been eating gluten pie crust, pizza pie crust for 35 years.
Just fascinating.
Yeah, if they'd have got him gluten-free, gotten him on the 90, and gotten him on, if he still wanted pizza, he could have pizza, but it had to have cauliflower gluten-free crust, okay?
Mm-hmm. But people say, oh, I tried going gluten-free, I didn't notice anything. And it's not something you feel a difference like a peanut allergy. You're removing something that's doing damage to the microvilli of the small intestines,
Mm-hmm.
and you eliminate it completely, and then your intestines then grow back and become strong, especially if you're
And you have to
supplementing.
have the 90.
Right.
With the 90, right?
Right. And then, like you said, if you've been eating gluten, then over time your bone marrow can't produce platelets in a healthy way, and your immune system can't function in a healthy way, and we end up getting autoimmune conditions and inflammatory conditions. But the root of it is a nutrient deficiency and eating foods that are doing damage to the body and the ability for the body to absorb nutrition.
And here we go, actually. When you have these type of diseases, things like cortisone and prednisone can give you some temporary relief.
Mm-hmm.
I just love my doctor. Man, I had skin problems all my life. And he gave me prednisone and cortisone, and the itching went away overnight. And within 2 weeks' time, the skin problem was gone.
Well, of
and then
course.
3 months later, they die.
Of course, it would temporarily go away. They're treating symptoms, not getting to the root cause.
Exactly.
Right. Right. Dr. Wallach, thank you so much. We're going to have you back on the show for sure, because I've got more questions have poured in from the listeners. And so I'd love to have you back on and to continue to share this information. You are a godsend. The work you do is absolutely amazing. There's so much confusion in the nutrient world. And what I love about your message is it's science-based, and you are backed by so many years of results. I've met thousands of people, myself personally, who've gotten results with you, and you've helped millions of people. And we just have to get this information out there that we can prevent disease, we can reverse disease, we can prevent birth defects, and we can help ourselves, but also help the planet through proper mineralization and through making sure we're avoiding the bad foods and ingesting the 90 essential nutrients. Please, listeners, go to takeyoursupplements.com to get on Dr. Wallach's protocol, to learn more about how you can actually become certified as a health coach, learning everything, all of Dr. Wallach's protocols. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Dr. Wallach, to wrap up today's interview?
Well, I just want to thank you so much, Ashley. You're an angel of God, and I'm just so proud of you and your husband, all the things you guys do. And, I'm just blessed that you would, ask me to participate with you, and just, we will do great things together. And it'll be one of those things where, right now people are also, looking for things to do because of the COVID, and they're being laid off.
Yeah.
And so we're looking for help. And so I'm glad you're working to get these people going. And so, I'm willing to participate and help you do what you're doing. And of course, we have all the textbooks and the CDs and DVDs and everything like that. And so it'll be one of those things where everybody's going to give the same answer to the same question. They don't have to be scared and say, oh my God, I don't know, I've never heard of that disease. Well, look it up in Let's Play Doctor, or Rare Earth and Cures, or Epigenetics. Look it up in those books. And you'll find the answers of what it is, and then how to deal with it. And, it's one of those things where you cannot fail. We've been doing this for 50 years. We've been doing this for 50 years. We have literally millions and millions and millions of people all over the world. And that's why we have to travel so much and do worldwide Zooms and so forth. And I can't thank you enough for all the people you're helping, Ashley. God bless you and your hub. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Dr. Joel Wallach. Check out takeyoursupplements.com. Talk to us for free. Let us help you get on his protocol, and also join the Learn True Health Facebook group, because you can ask Dr. Wallach your questions when I have him back on the show next. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing these episodes with those you care about. There are so many amazing episodes on so many fantastic topics. You can go to learntruehealth.com, use the search function on my website, and most of my episodes now have been transcribed. So you can even read through the transcripts. You can listen to the episodes, you can read through the interviews, and you can search through the content to find what you want to learn about. And also, if you have a friend or family member with an illness, an injury, a disease, or a health question, you can use the search function both in the Facebook group and in my website, learntruehealth.com, to find information to share with those you care about. I can't talk highly enough about takeyoursupplements.com. So please go there if you haven't already. Try it for 30 days. Just try, especially the liquid minerals. Give them a try, or just get on the 90 essential nutrients for a month. It's fantastic. I've even had clients stop drinking coffee and no longer even need coffee because they got so much energy, natural energy, because their body was really, instead of, the body, when it's lacking energy and it says get a coffee or an energy drink, or eat more sugar, it's really desperate for nutrition. And so when you start to fill up those nutrient tanks with your vitamins and minerals and trace minerals, it's amazing how much energy you will get from that. So just give it a try. It's pretty fantastic. It has really changed my life, and all my clients rave about it, and I know you will too. TakeYourSupplements.com. And hey, if you want to hear from those listeners who have been working with TakeYourSupplements.com, come join the Facebook group and ask, or use the search function. There have been a ton of listeners who have shared that they've had a great experience working with TakeYourSupplements.com and Dr. Wallach supplements. Awesome. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. We have some really exciting episodes coming up in the coming weeks. I can't wait for you to hear them. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.